India. How did you use social listening in to better understand the Southeast Asian audience?
Sure. So I'm really passionate about the opportunities of social listening, because it enables you to really advocate on behalf of the customer. And when I was at Grab, we looked at social listening at the intersection of customer research and insights, and customer experience and service, and marketing. And I think that at the intersection of those three disciplines, it really enables you to provide a lot of value to customers. And I think that really it comes down to, for you as an end user, what matters to you, and how can you deliver value from these social signals to your business.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a couple of good points in terms of also identifying research as well. I think, social listening, I was speaking with a client yesterday and they're using it for multiple things, not only in terms of, marketing, but in terms of product development, things like that. So yeah, I'd love to hear, how this applies to not only marketing, but maybe some of the other departments which you worked in previously.
Yeah. So I think that, I can give you a recent example, because we're still very much living in a post-COVID world. I love to use an example of how we leveraged social data as it relates to research, for then the wider team to take that into account in product development. And the example that comes to mind is Grab Care. And essentially that was a product that stemmed directly from the insights and conversations that were happening in a market like Singapore. So we received an alert from a nurse who was having a challenge getting a ride home, because there was a perceived stigma of transporting people and healthcare workers specifically to and from hospitals. And, we started a conversation with some of the teams internally to go, hey, this is an issue, and we can dig deeper to understand how big of an issue it is, not only in Singapore, but in other markets as well. And you take that information that's very timely, and you layer on other sources of information that you have, whether it's direct complaints from your CX platform, so looking at number of tickets, or even in the driver centers, conversations that people are raising about their concerns, perhaps transporting these healthcare workers. And so that goes to say that this is one example of how we leveraged social listening to be at a leading edge of product development. And we then launched Grab Care in Singapore, and then shortly after in other markets as well, which is a dedicated fleet of Grab cars to transport healthcare workers safely, to and from designated hospitals to their home. And really that's testament to the agility and the collaboration of an amazing team in Singapore. And I was very excited to kind of watch how the team came into action and make that happen.
No, I love that. It's a great story of using social listening for good. I mean, it can definitely help marketing and sales, but I think it's a beautiful initiative of helping the healthcare workers during this time when you identify a challenge that a lot of your drivers were a bit apprehensive of transporting them. So I love that you have taken that one story and turned it into an entire kind of support system for the healthcare workers during this time. I think that's amazing. So I think, yeah, it's a beautiful way of kind of, the opportunities that may emerge. I think one thing that, a lot of people who are watching this, one of the challenges, I know you have experience with this, is multiple languages. In Southeast Asia,
Yes.
there are so many different languages and markets, dialects like that. So how do you tackle something like that when you're so many cultural nuances and languages to deal with?
It's challenging, and I look forward to the day when natural language processing has become so advanced that it's a non-issue. But the reality is today, the language nuances provide a number of challenges when you're running a social listening practice across this region. The most obvious one is just the sentiment tagging in language outside of English, because most of the engineering for Google has been very much on English in terms of their NLP engines. And so as it relates to sentiment tagging in English, we're getting close to a 90 to 95% accuracy, but there hasn't been as many resources dedicated to the algorithms that help with the sentiment engines and tagging for other Southeast Asian languages like Vietnamese or Thai, or to a lesser extent Bahasa. So I think that the nuances and the beauty of some of the Southeast Asian languages are that some words could be positive or negative based on context. And I think that adds a layer of complexity when you're really seeking to understand how customers are receiving your product or service or marketing initiative, because the sentiment tagging efficacy in some Southeast Asian languages is challenging. I think that historically we've used Sprinkler, and they've really invested a lot of time and resources to help increase the accuracy of sentiment tagging, up to 85% in some of the Southeast Asian languages. So it's exciting to see companies start to invest in models that will help improve the accuracy of the language. Sentiment tagging is not the only challenge when it comes to Southeast Asian listening. The other challenge that we have is geographic tagging and filtering. As you know, been living in Singapore, we speak English here mostly, and in Malaysia, there is a constituent of English speakers also in the Philippines. So as it relates to filtering mentions for specific geographies within Southeast Asia, it's challenging. It's particularly challenging as the APIs of social networks begin to think harder about what information they share with third parties. So historically, Twitter used to share the precise geolocation of your tweet, and that was exciting for marketers and business owners as a source of insights. But now, we're having to get a little bit more creative in how we filter, and especially as it relates to English language posts in Southeast Asian markets, it's challenging and requires a lot more investment in the setup and in the queries.
Yeah, no, I'd love to get your thoughts on, you mentioned sentiment tagging. Can you maybe share an example in terms of what you did previously and how it differed, pre and post kind of tagging?
Yeah, so I will say that one of the advantage or disadvantages, depending on how you look at it in Southeast Asia, is that in some of our markets, human capital is relatively reasonable. So you can invest in people manually going through thousands of mentions, tagging a post, whether it's positive, negative, and neutral. And we did that for Singapore Airlines. We would go through every single post and tag the mentions. So they had 100% accuracy of the sentiment analysis. Now, that's not sustainable and it's not scalable.
Yeah.
And over time, we've really tried to work with businesses to think about how we can accept a margin of error
Mm.
and think more longitudinally about sentiment. So thinking about how it changes over time. But in terms of how we have begun to enhance the sentiment accuracy, it comes down to a combination of things. There's still an element of manually reviewing what is being tagged as positive, negative, neutral, and then feeding that back to your third-party tool, who then can help to update the specific algorithm for that market. So I think that that's one way. The other way is, you know, thinking really hard about how you set it up, and think about sometimes in the query itself, maybe you have more potentially more sentiment keyword triggers that could help you as a theme set up a filter to get a better understanding of perhaps the negative mentions or the challenges that you're hearing from customers online. So I think sentiment is imperfect, and we're still thinking about how we can enhance the accuracy of our understanding. But generally, my inclination is to accept the imperfection and think about how it changes over time, and really look at the variations versus a point in time of the sentiment breakdown.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. And I think people listening to this will probably be a mix of those who are, hearing what you're saying and maybe want to try it out, and those who are already implemented. So of those who are, wanting to try it out, you mentioned, having proper setup. But what are some things they can do to make sure they're set up for success when it comes to social listening?
Oh, I love to think about what I would have done differently. If I could rewind and restart a social listening practice from scratch, I think that the first thing that I would do is be very focused on what we're doing social listening for. What is the objective of doing social listening? Because you can use it for a broader business initiative to provide more holistic customer service. So you can ensure that you're capturing all of those mentions effectively, and then prioritizing and responding accordingly. You can use it to identify advocates and brand champions who can be part of your media amplification. You can use it for brand reputation and crisis management. And whatever you use it for specifically will impact how you set it up and the stakeholders that you align with and start your social listening journey on. So I would say that the first thing I would do is really think hard about those objectives and prioritize them and try to address one at a time. So that's number one. I think from there is invest a lot of time and energy to ensure that you have the right PIC, the right person who is accountable and responsible for social listening, and they are invested very much in the query building of social listening, because I think that is make or break for your practice. How strong you are at identifying keywords and leveraging Boolean operators to ensure you've got a very strong signal, to noise ratio. And then from there, it's all about bringing stakeholders along with you to leverage this data to take action. And I think that's a very big part of social listening, is what do you do with it? What
Mm.
are you going to do with that data? How are you realizing the impact of this data based on the objective that you've set out to do? And I hope that the practitioners who are setting up social listening are really thinking about not operating in a silo, and really establishing those connections with other stakeholders and getting them au fait with the opportunities of social listening for their specific team, and really trying to enhance their practice and deliver on their objectives.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, and it got me thinking, because a client was asking me yesterday, literally, mentioned internal stakeholders, and obviously social listening can be helpful when you're doing external marketing and sales and customer service and so on. But also, I would love to get your thoughts in terms of internal, because that's one of the challenges that nearly every client always comes to me with is, how do you manage internally different stakeholders? So how do you get their buy-in on different things? How do you get them, like you're saying, to take action when they each have their own objectives? And I think, to your point, identifying what their KPIs are and objectives are is the first step. But how would you perhaps weave in, the results or reports from social listening to kind of influence or get buy-in internally? I'm not sure if you have experience. Yeah.
Lots of experience with that, and it's a journey. It's not something that happens overnight. Most people outside of the team actually in charge of social listening don't spend as much time with the data, know the capabilities, or are really invested in utilizing that. So you really have to step out of that box and empathize with those stakeholders to say, okay, what could operations use from this? What could the tech and engineering team? And there's a couple of ways that we had begun to build those bridges with the team. The first is number one, education, making sure that the respective teams know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how they might be able to leverage that data. So as an example, I remember setting up my first meeting with the engineering team to say, hey, I just want to let you know that we have a social listening practice, and this is what it is. This is Sprinkler. This is the tool that we use, and this is the data that it generates. Now, I think it's relevant to you because potentially this source of data could be a leading indicator for app incidences. But I'm really interested to know from you how you think you could use this data, and let's work together to try and make it actionable for your team. So those first jam sessions, I think, are really important because it starts those conversations, but it can't end there. From there, you need a level of reinforcement and a level of commitment to say that let's try this out together. Let's pilot a project so you see the value it could potentially bring to your team. The other thing we did, aside from these initial team-specific introductions to the platform and the possibilities of social listening, is a regular newsletter. We initially started out with a bi-weekly kind of report and newsletter, and then we switched to a monthly cadence because we refined who our target audience was and how they were consuming and utilizing that information. So on a monthly basis, we would synthesize a very readable and interesting newsletter that really gave the business a pulse on customer perspectives. And I think that served as a reinforcement to say, hey, there's a value in this data stream. And and it's timely, and it's consistent, it's always on, and you should be thinking about how you could leverage this, maybe not solely this data source, but in conjunction with your other data sources to make really informed business decisions and even informed business planning.
Mm. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I think one thing you mentioned that's key is education. I think from the get-go, so they understand. I think as marketers, we assume that other teams know exactly what we're doing, exactly what the products and services we're doing, but most of the time they don't. So I think educating them up front, and then the big challenge, which I'm kind of glad you addressed, was the reinforcement or the sustaining of the momentum, because that's where people usually fall off the deep end. They say, okay, we had this great kickoff meeting, this great huddle, everyone's excited, and then 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, everyone's back in their usual kind of day-to-day job, and they're like, they completely forget it. So I think that the newsletter is a great idea. Did you find that was enough to keep them kind of engaged and taking action, or was there other things you've implemented?
No, I feel like the answer is no. It's never enough, right? Because as a practitioner, your mind is swirling with all the possibilities of how different teams could be utilizing this in their day-to-day operations and decision making. So in addition to kind of those educational pieces and updates, there's also the work that you need to showcase and kind of wrap up as a case study to say, this is how we used it. They need to see it in action. Mm. So I think, for example, the safety team during COVID reached out after having read the newsletter, knowing that this is possible, to say, hey, how can we visualize, how can we see this data kind of in real time to have a pulse of how people are reacting to our business as it relates to COVID. Mm-hmm. So what we were able to do with Sprinkler is to create a data visualization, put it into the war room that showed in real time the messages that were coming up around Grab and around COVID specifically, and that was really helpful to understand how the sentiment was changing, as well as what markets were picking up on specific issues or specific services that we rolled out. And that's an example of seeing the data in action and in a very relevant context. And I think that continues to be one of the most important ways to reinforce the possibilities is to be agile and demonstrate initiative to say, yes, we can help you. Let us stop what we're doing, kind of revise some queries, think about how we can do a display and put it into the war room. But I think that there's a lot of other kind of less glamorous examples as well that help people specifically address a challenge. So when we launched the new merchant app for Grab, we were able to set up a quick dashboard so they could see in real time the app reviews coming in and understand what was going well or what the challenges were and aggregate that across markets. So I think that it's really ensuring that the practitioners are tuned into the business. You need to know the teams that you could potentially impact. So you need to have some strong hypotheses to say, we know this data enough and we know how it could potentially serve a product marketer or serve an operations team or serve a safety team, and continue to be in touch with them about what data you're seeing, and then where possible, find those points that you could do something bespoke that would serve a specific need and really help them understand and realize the potential of this social listening data.
Beautiful example. I was all visualizing it in my head when you're talking through it. And I think the way I visualize it is like, you have like an entire pie, and the pie has different flavors. So instead of giving each of the departments that,
Love pie.
yeah, eat the whole pie, you would say, safety team, you guys like, blueberry, and ops, you like peach cobbler. So we're gonna give you a slice of this so you can see what it tastes like. And if it's, tasty enough, then we'll do more things with you together. But I think that's one way I was visualizing it, because otherwise you go with them with too much data. And I think to your point, they don't understand the timeliness and they don't understand the relevance of it, and they just tend to zone out. So I think the way you make it palatable for the different audiences and give them flavors that they want, give them a taste, and then obviously if they want more of it, I think is a beautiful way of kind of tying this together. So very, very nicely done. Very, very practical tips in here. So I knew I was throwing you a curveball, but I think those are some really, really good tips for anyone listening.
Great. Yeah, I'm really passionate about it. And I think that I know as we start to wrap up here, I think, it's hard not to mention privacy. I think it's a very hot topic around the world today. And with the new docudrama on Netflix, The Social Dilemma, I think it's even more top of mind of a group of people. And, I think in this discussion, I hope what we surfaced was some of the upside of sharing a level of data. And I think that there's still room for the social networks to continue to be more thoughtful about what they do share with third parties. But ultimately, I hope they continue to share, even if it's anonymized, these public mentions for businesses to aggregate, because there is good happening as a result of it. There's better customer service. There's more innovation and product development. And I think the possibilities with leveraging that to create more customer-centric businesses abound. And I hope we can find the right balance of, sharing enough data to ensure we can hear and understand the conversations about brands, but do so with respect to people's privacy. So that's the challenge moving forward, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can have an entire conversation on, protecting data and the pros and cons. And I think you touched on it. It's a good conversation starter. So, hopefully we'll have to do a follow-up on and dive a bit deeper into that. But until then, yeah, thank you so much, Margie. I really appreciate your insights. Last question is, how can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more about you and kind of what you do?
They can reach out on LinkedIn. I think that's the best platform for us to connect professionally, and would love to start a conversation. So please connect.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Margie. Really, really appreciate you sharing your super practical, actionable insights on social listening and getting buy-in. Really, really appreciate that.
Great. Thanks, Joe.
My pleasure. And if you're watching this and you enjoyed today's interview, please feel free to share it with your colleagues, your bosses, anyone who might find it helpful. Spread the love. And thank you so much, guys. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.